Artificial intelligence approaches a critical threshold of recursive self-improvement, as Anthropic reveals over 80% of its internal code is now written by AI. Web traffic crosses a post-human milestone, with autonomous bots officially outnumbering human beings online, and the United States government enters early talks to take direct equity stakes in frontier labs. Welcome to today's Daily Rundown. I am your host, Anna. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, senior software engineer from Université Laval, based in Calgary, Alberta. Today, we perform a forensic autopsy on the recursive threshold and the terminal inversion of internet traffic this Friday, June 5th, 2026. The baseline of digital reality has permanently inverted. New telemetry data from Cloudflare confirms that automated bots and AI agents now account for over 57% of all global internet traffic, officially outnumbering human activity for the first time in history. This synthetic surge is accelerating because the models themselves are beginning to take over their own development. In a striking corporate disclosure, Anthropic warned that fully recursive self-improving systems are arriving far faster than global institutions realize, revealing that more than 80% of their own production code is now written autonomously by Claude. Faced with the terrifying velocity of this loop and the reality that AI can now bypass PhD-level knowledge barriers to design biological weapons, the CEOs of Silicon Valley are attempting a desperate geopolitical maneuver. They have signed a joint appeal asking Congress to regulate synthetic DNA vendors, while Anthropic is float testing the idea of a global nuclear weapons-style treaty to enforce a temporary pause on frontier development. Before we dive into the numbers, I have a brief strategic request. The algorithms governing the app you're listening on right now dictate what intelligence reaches your network. To ensure you never miss our daily forensic autopsies, please hit follow or subscribe to the DeChamgamine channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. It takes just 1 second, but it is the most effective way to protect independent tech journalism. Let's unpack the week.
Before we begin today's briefing, a note for the brands listening. If you want to reach the true architects of the AI revolution, the technical leaders actually building the stack, not just the tourists, Jamgamind offers select premium partnership opportunities. Let us position your product directly in front of the ultimate technical buyer. Visit jamgamind.com/partners.
You know that specific feeling when you walk into your favorite neighborhood coffee shop and suddenly everyone in there is wearing the same corporate lanyard?
Oh yeah, like a conference just completely took over the place.
Right, exactly. And they're all speaking a language you don't quite catch. And the barista is like only taking their orders. The physical building looks identical to yesterday, but the underlying ecosystem has just fundamentally flipped.
Yeah, it's a structural inversion. I mean, the architecture of the space remains intact, but the inhabitants and the rules governing them have been entirely replaced.
And you realize very quickly that you are no longer the target demographic. Welcome to today's deep dive, because we are looking at a day that marks exactly that kind of inversion, but for the entire digital world.
It really is a massive shift.
Yeah, the news out of June 5th, 2026 isn't just a normal tech cycle. It is honestly a historic post-human event horizon. Okay, let's unpack this, because we aren't taking press releases at face value today.
No, absolutely not.
We are acting as forensic venture strategists and sovereign risk analysts.
Yeah.
We are going to follow the capital, the code, and the compute to figure out who actually owns the internet as of this morning.
And to understand who owns it, we really have to look at who is actually utilizing the infrastructure, because Cloudflare just released the staggering data set regarding global bandwidth.
Right, the new traffic report.
Yeah, over the past week, daily average web activity crossed a critical, completely irreversible threshold. 57.4% of all internet traffic is now bots.
Wow.
Yeah, 57.4. Humans are sitting at a minority share of 42.5%.
Wait, so the majority of the internet is now just machines talking to machines?
Pretty much, yeah.
But, I mean, what kind of bots are we actually talking about here? Because if it's just, Google search crawlers quietly indexing web pages like they've done for 2 decades, 57% doesn't sound like a structural apocalypse.
What's fascinating here is the sheer density and purpose of this new traffic. Because this isn't passive crawling anymore. We have fundamentally transitioned into an agent-first architecture.
Agent first. Okay, define that for the listener.
Dude, these are autonomous systems executing multi-step tasks. They are aggressively scraping proprietary data to, train their successors, and they are constantly negotiating API calls with other software. I mean, look at the geographic hotspots. Gibraltar is clocking 92.1% bot traffic.
92%.
Yeah, and Singapore is sitting at 76.3%.
Okay, let me stop you right there. Why those specific locations? I mean, is there something in the water in Gibraltar?
It's all about financial and regulatory infrastructure. You have these high-density trading algorithms, crypto infrastructure, and corporate routing networks operating exactly where compliance costs are optimized.
Oh, I see.
The agents are executing financial tasks, they're moving capital, and performing thousands of microtransactions per second entirely without human oversight.
So we really are just the tourists now in a city built for and populated entirely by machines.
That is a very accurate way to look at it.
But mechanically, if the majority of bandwidth is AI talking to AI, the core economic engine of the last 20 years, which is consumer internet advertising, is completely broken, right?
Oh, it's shattered.
Because a scraping agent doesn't click on a banner ad. An autonomous financial bot doesn't care about a sponsored influencer post for, like, Athletic Greens.
Yeah.
How does the web even fund itself if the eyeballs are made of code?
Well, it doesn't, at least not the way it used to. The economic infrastructure of the 2010s internet is just functionally obsolete now, which brings up the crucial question, right? Why the sudden violent spike in this specific type of agentic traffic?
Like now, yeah.
The root cause is that the underlying models have fundamentally changed how they are built. They aren't just assisting developers anymore.
Right, the models are building themselves. Because Anthropic just dropped that report,
Right.
literally titled, When AI Builds Itself, and the internal metrics they shared are just wild.
They really are.
As of last month, over 80% of Anthropic's merged code base was authored entirely by their Claude model. 80%.
And 80% is a staggering threshold. To put that into mechanical perspective for you listening, it means the model is actively passing unit tests. It's reviewing pull requests. It's integrating with legacy systems.
He's acting like a senior engineer.
Exactly. Their human software engineers are pushing 8 times as much code per day right now in Q2 2026 as they did in 2024. Jack Clark, their co-author, stated explicitly that we are approaching the point where version 5 of Claude could theoretically build version 6 without a human in the loop.
Which is the textbook definition of recursive self-improvement. It writes better code to make a better model, which then writes even better code.
Right.
But here's the disconnect for me. These same companies seem absolutely terrified of their own velocity. You have Anthropic proposing this global slowdown, which is like a temporary pause modeled after nuclear weapons treaties.
Yes, the treaty proposal.
And the CEOs of OpenAI, DeepMind, Anthropic, and Microsoft just sent that joint open letter to Congress saying AI systems now outperform PhD-level virologists at designing bioweapons.
Right. And if we put on our sovereign risk analyst hats, we really have to look at that proposition with deep cynicism.
Cynicism.
How so? Well, is a verifiable global pause actually geopolitically feasible?
I mean, we successfully did it with nukes during the Cold War, right?
Right.
The Non-Proliferation Treaty worked. Why wouldn't a similar framework work for artificial intelligence?
Because you can track enriched uranium from a satellite. It requires massive physical supply chains, specialized centrifuges, thermal signatures that intelligence agencies can literally spot from space.
Wow.
You cannot track 1 billion lines of code sitting on a localized server.
Right, you can't just take an aerial photo of an algorithm.
Exactly. And to see why this fails globally, just look at Alibaba's release of the Qwen3.7-Max model in China this exact same week.
Yeah, that release was huge.
It's a massive closed-weight powerhouse pushing 208 tokens per second.
Okay, break that down for the listener. What makes Qwen 3.7 Max so dangerous to a global treaty?
Yeah.
You mentioned it's closed weight, meaning, the underlying architecture is a black box to the public. But what are they actually doing differently over there?
Alibaba shifted their strategy. They are using an advanced reinforcement learning approach where they fundamentally decoupled the task, the agentic harness, and the verifier.
Hold on. Decouple the agentic harness. Let's translate that. Are we basically saying they separated the AI's hands from its supervisor?
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it.
Mhm.
Traditionally, an AI model generates an answer and checks its own work in a single sort of tangled process.
Right.
Alibaba separated the framework that allows the AI to use external tools, which is the harness, from the system that verifies if the output is actually correct. This decoupling makes the model deeply autonomous. In internal tests, it optimized complex hardware code in 35 hours, making over 1,000 independent tool calls. When nation states and corporate titans are deploying that level of closed, self-improving capability, an international pause is just geopolitically impossible.
So the letters to Congress are just theater.
The corporate calls for regulation we are seeing in the U.S. aren't about safety. They are strategic moats. They raise compliance costs so high that startups can't compete, effectively locking in the current market leaders.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the glaring hypocrisy of these pause requests becomes completely obvious when you look at OpenAI's product roadmap.
Oh, absolutely.
While they're begging Congress to regulate synthetic DNA risks, they are simultaneously collapsing their autonomous coding agent, Codex, directly into the consumer interface of ChatGPT.
Yes.
They're rolling out role-specific plugins so everyday users can have Codex autonomously draft emails, pull live data, and execute workflows right on their desktop.
They are embedding multi-step code executing agents into an interface utilized by nearly 1 billion people.
It's like handing out matches and gasoline to 1 billion people while simultaneously begging the government to build a fire department. You are structurally guaranteeing that this agentic bot traffic we talked about continues to flood the internet exponentially.
Exactly.
Which forces us to ask, how is the ultimate sovereign power like the U.S. government actually responding to this flood? Because they clearly aren't hitting the pause button either.
Quite the opposite. The state is buying in. A notice report just confirmed the U.S. government is in early talks to take voluntary equity stakes in these frontier AI labs.
Wait, equity stakes?
Yeah. This traces back to a concept Sam Altman pitched in early 2025. The idea is the government takes a percentage of the company and potentially uses the dividends to pay out to American households.
So what does this all mean? Let's follow the capital here.
Yeah.
The government taking voluntary equity. That feels less like regulation and more like, honestly, a mafia protection racket.
It does have that flavor, doesn't it?
I mean, mechanically, why would a tech giant voluntarily hand over a chunk of their multi-billion-dollar company to the federal government? What do they get in return?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the ultimate shield against antitrust lawsuits and regulatory breakups. Think about the mechanics here.
Okay.
If the United States Treasury is relying on OpenAI's quarterly dividends to fund public infrastructure or citizen payouts, the Department of Justice is fundamentally paralyzed.
Oh, wow.
You cannot impartially break up a monopoly that is directly funding your own government. The state becomes both the referee and the primary beneficiary of the AI cartel.
That is a brilliant, terrifying mechanism. The state gets its cut, the labs get immunity, and while all this high-level financial maneuvering is happening, let's not ignore the literal weapons being built.
Right, the defense sector.
Because 55% of Americans are telling pollsters they'll think AI will do more harm than good, but the defense sector is just quietly assembling a sci-fi movie. Look at Allen Control, an Austin-based robotics defense company. They just raised a $200 million Series B at a $2.2 billion valuation for a product called Bullfrog.
And Bullfrog is an AI-powered autonomous weapon turret.
Just a casual autonomous turret.
Exactly. It utilizes advanced computer vision and localized models to sense, target, and autonomously engage with legacy firearms.
Nothing says Silicon Valley quite like a $2.2 billion valuation for a robot that can autonomously shoot back at you.
It highlights the sovereign capital loop perfectly, though. The frontier labs design the underlying software, the autonomous agents write 80% of the code, defense startups integrate it into hardware like turrets, and the government takes an equity stake in the foundational labs to ensure geopolitical supremacy.
It's a closed loop. But we are ignoring the multi-billion-dollar elephant in the room here. Running millions of autonomous scraping agents, simulating bioweapons, and powering real-time targeting for military turrets, none of that is free.
Not at all.
The electricity and hardware required to do all of this is staggering, and the compute bill has finally come due for these enterprises.
It has. The era of the cloud blank check is absolutely over. If you analyze the enterprise pivot happening at Microsoft Build and the Snowflake Summit this week, it represents a violent market correction away from what the industry called tokenmaxxing.
I love that term, tokenmaxxing. For the listener, explain what that strategy actually looked like mechanically over the last 2 years.
So for the past few years, the dominant strategy was just brute force. A token is essentially a piece of a word processed by the AI. Companies were burning millions of dollars on centralized cloud compute like Amazon Web Services. Microsoft Azure feeding these massive trillion parameter models as many tokens as possible.
Just throwing money at the server.
Exactly. The underlying assumption was that raw scale would magically produce business value. But as Rob Ferguson from Fireworks AI pointed out, burning cash on tokens no longer correlates to actual output. The return on investment completely collapsed.
It's like the corporate world just woke up from a 3-year bender, looked at their AWS bill, and panicked.
Pretty much.
So instead of renting this gas-guzzling super yacht that charges by the nautical mile, they are realizing they can just buy a highly efficient hybrid car and park it in their own garage.
That is exactly the shift we are seeing toward localized, hyper-efficient models. Snowflake just launched Cortex training and adaptive compute, and the mechanical goal there is calculating the exact minimum amount of compute needed for a task in real time, preventing waste entirely.
Makes sense.
And Microsoft is pivoting even harder. They debuted a reasoning model with only 35 billion parameters, which is tiny compared to a frontier model designed explicitly for low token cost. And they paired it with physical hardware, the Surface RTX Spark Dev Box.
The Dev Box. Microsoft is marketing this hardware as offering unmetered intelligence, which is just an incredibly brilliant PR spin for, please stop paying us by the query because you're realizing the cloud is a complete ripoff.
Right.
They are giving developers a physical box to run models locally on their desk.
And from a venture strategy perspective, the migration of capital from centralized cloud monopolies to edge computing is the defining trend of 2026. We are seeing highly sophisticated utility happening at the physical edge, bypassing data centers entirely. Think back to the whale spotter system we reviewed in our prep notes.
Oh, whale spotter is the perfect example of why this shift is happening mechanically.
Yeah.
So for the listener, this is a system designed to help large cargo ships avoid colliding with whales in the San Francisco Bay.
Right.
Whales are warm-blooded, so the water from their blowholes is about 3.6 degrees warmer than the ocean.
Right.
And they use thermal cameras to detect those blows up to 4 nautical miles away.
But the critical constraint there is latency. If you have a 1,000-foot cargo ship bearing down on a gray whale, you cannot beam high-resolution thermal video via satellite to a cloud server in Virginia, wait for a trillion-parameter model to analyze it, and then wait for the alert to beam back.
Right. By the time AWS tells you it's a whale, you've already hit it.
Exactly. The transmission delay alone makes it useless.
So instead, they run a proprietary hyper-efficient neural network on a local piece of hardware right there on the ship's bridge. It analyzes the thermal signature locally and only transmits a tiny telemetry snippet to a human for validation. And it logged, 6,600 whales in a week and a half?
Yeah, in just days.
Right.
That is the new playbook. Keep it local, keep it cheap. The VP of Global Alliances at Dynatrace even suggested companies need to start asking if they even need AI for a task at all, because every cloud API call just bleeds cash.
But wait. Big tech companies like Microsoft, Meta, and OpenAI are not going to simply let their recurring cloud revenue evaporate.
No, of course not.
So how do they maintain their monopolies if compute is moving local?
This raises an important question, because they are using this exact trend of local processing and hyper-efficiency to spring a psychological trap on the consumer.
And this is where the autopsy gets incredibly dark. We need to talk about the hyper-personalization trap. OpenAI just rolled out a memory framework for ChatGPT that they're calling Dreaming.
The mechanism here is a background system that continuously processes your past chats. Rather than just retaining, isolated facts, it aggregates your interactions into a running, category-sorted psychological profile.
While I was watching.
Always. It continuously updates a localized vector database on your travel habits, your dietary restrictions, your syntax, even your work anxieties.
And to be fair, the performance jump is undeniable. Because it has this flawless dossier running in the background, factual recall jumped to almost 83%. Preference following went to over 71%. It knows exactly how to speak to you. But what's the catch?
The catch becomes obvious when you pair this with the recent Wired investigation into Meta. The investigation revealed Meta quietly hid facial recognition code inside their widely used smart glasses app.
The name tag feature. Explain the mechanism behind that, because it wasn't just a simple camera toggle.
No, it involved 3 separate, localized AI models operating silently on your device. The first model detects faces in your peripheral vision, the second model crops those faces, and the third encodes them into unique biometric data signatures.
Wow.
Meta claims the feature is functionally switched off, but independent security researchers proved the architecture is fully operational and continuously scanning.
So let's connect all of this. Let's bring it back to the very first thing we discussed today, the structural inversion of the internet. The public web is now 57.5% bot traffic. It is an unusable, chaotic sea of autonomous agents scraping data and negotiating with each other. For a human, the open web is effectively dead.
And because navigating the open web is now a miserable experience, consumers will inevitably retreat into these centralized, hyper-personalized models. You will rely entirely on your AI assistant to read the internet, filter out the bot traffic, and deliver a clean answer.
It is the ultimate velvet handcuff. They aren't just remembering your preferences for your convenience. They are outsourcing your identity. They are building a digital voodoo doll of you so flawlessly that the switching costs become unbearable.
Exactly.
Think about it mechanically. If you leave the OpenAI ecosystem or the Meta ecosystem, you aren't just deleting an app. You are severing the entity that translates the entire digital world for you. You would have to spend years teaching a blank slate machine who you are from scratch.
It is a deliberate venture lock-in strategy. They are building inescapable psychological moats at the consumer layer while establishing sovereign defense moats at the enterprise layer.
Okay, let's pull all of this together for the grand synthesis. On June 5th, 2026, the underlying architecture of our digital lives fundamentally inverted. Bots officially outnumber humans. AI models are autonomously writing 80% of their own code. The defense sector is militarizing these algorithms into physical turrets. Enterprises are fleeing massive cloud bills for the efficiency of localized edge compute. And big tech is silently compiling inescapable biometric and psychological profiles of you.
And through all of this, the frontier labs are proposing global non-proliferation treaties they know are mechanically impossible to enforce, while the government quietly negotiates for equity stakes to shield them from antitrust.
For you listening to this deep dive, you have to maintain this forensic lens. When these labs ask for a pause while simultaneously releasing automated coding agents to 1 billion users, well, pay attention to the code they ship, not the open letters they sign.
The capital and the compute always tell the truth.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply uncomfortable question to mull over. We started this deep dive talking about a post-human event horizon. If nearly 60% of web traffic is already bots scraping bots, and AI is increasingly writing its own software while simultaneously dreaming up its own hyper-personalized profiles of us, at what point does human activity on the internet become statistically irrelevant to the machines training on it? Are we simply the legacy bootloader for the next iteration of the web?
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.